'Tis I, your dear pal and friend, King Chuck. It's Sunday, time for our little sermon, mutants. Maybe pupils. I shouldn't call you a mutant. You're not mutants. Or at least, some of you aren't. Man. I lucked out this year. I went to Breakaway this year. Great event. Lots of good sunshine. There was a threat of rain on Saturday. The rain just missed us. It rained after everybody went home. As a matter of fact, we had a thunderstorm last night, and my little adorable dog had to jump up into the bed with me. Aw. Yeah, she hates thunderstorms with a passion. Yeah, she hates fireworks, she hates thunderstorms, and I have to, I'm her protector. So, okay. But anyway, Breakaway, a lot of, good, feel-good music this year. A lot, of course, you had your fair share of, it was all EDM music, obviously. Lots of mashups. They had Gigantic Nightmare, which is Big Gigantic mixed in with Nightmare, who was a EDM producer. The big artist this year was on Friday, and it was Fisher. His big hit was Losing It. And anyway, that was such a good show. But it was not really all about the music for me. It was being around really cute young ladies and, songs everywhere. Lots of nice female asses everywhere. And a couple of not so nice ones too, unfortunately. There was some cottage cheese in the mix, but, can't win them all, unfortunately, in this time and age. But that's B-U-T. There was some bad and ugly. I did not like how they set up the restrooms this year. It used to be kind of a wide open space, and then they decided, let's cramp everything. So, unfortunately, here it was like, why did they put the toilets into a cramped space this year was a dumb idea. There were lines everywhere. And, my cousin told me the right thing to do. Don't go to the first toilet in the damn facility. You just go way to the back. And that was a wise decision because I was in and out probably in less than 5 minutes. But they even put some porta-johns in the front part of the facility as well, which was kind of a wise decision. But anyway, they had 2 stages this year. Of course, they had 2 main stages. You didn't have to go up the fucking hill for the second stage this year, which was awesome. You just had to go to on the hill this year. They had the silent disco, and that's part of the ugly. I told you the story that Jimmy John's was the lead sponsor of the silent disco this year. As a matter of fact, they even called their thing Club Sandwich. Another little bad pun. And I told you the story about Jimmy John's. Jimmy John Leotard is the founder. He's a big Trump supporter. He sold his company to Work Capital in 2019. Work is the company that simply told our government, do not raise the minimum wage. You're going to kill our company. This is a company that's allegedly worth over $40 billion. And yet they're telling me and you we don't deserve a raise. Folks, I told you the story that, and this is how sad things are. So I want to tell you this story. It's really sad. So my mother, who is 70 years old, she has to work in fast food because she made some bad decisions financially over the years. And now she's having to work at a work-owned restaurant. And she worked with a lot of teenagers. And tragically, one of the teenagers took on a second job as a drug dealer. And he was murdered last week, as a matter of fact. And he actually dealt pot on the street. And he said that his pot was cheaper than what you get at like Jars or Knox or any of the cannabis people in town. And I'm like, and that's another problem, because earlier this year, Governor Gretchen decided to raise the price of marijuana by 24% because she slapped on a tax. And I'm like, something, man? The laws were created to stop drug dealing. But now, and synthetic crap and all that shit. But yet, she decided, okay, we're going, it's making big business, so let's take money out of the pockets of those who smoke pot. Instead of doing what a true progressive would do, and that's tax the wealthy. Tax the DeVosses, tax the Myers. They got money. That's what it boils down to. I agree. Tax the goddamn billionaires. Don't tax, the small guy. I mean, Gretchen Whitmer, she's a centralist. And centralist laws don't bend, it's like, basically it's saying, well, the billionaires don't get to pay as much, but now we got to pay a little bit more. But that's what happens when daddy is working in the healthcare industry. But anyway, of course, the ugly about Breakaway this year, instead of marijuana, instead of cannabis, they had all these stands selling nicotine, vapes, and patches. It's like, well, we can't do the cigarettes anymore, so let's do the patches and shit. And I'm like, now you're marketing this shit to college kids. I mean, that's the bulk of who goes to these festivals. I mean, there's some older people who go there. There were a few grandparents there who went to these festivals. I mean, come on, my grandmother was a huge fan of electronic music. Yeah, she thought it was cool before anyone else did. She had all these old Moog synthesizer albums from the 60s. Yeah, The Age of Electronicus by Dick Hyman. And that's his real name. He's still alive. He's 99 years old. He was also the organist on the 1970s run of Beat the Clock, in the early 70s, actually. Yeah, there were a couple of runs of Beat the Clock. There was a late 70s run that was hosted by Monty Hall. Remember that? But the early 70s run, it was actually shot in Canada, and Gene Wood hosted it. And Goods and Todman actually tried out of doing some shows in Canada, thinking that they were going to save a lot of money and production costs and shit. And what ended up happening was, I'm trying to remember who hosted the original 70s run of Beat the Clock. Jack Nars, there we go. Jack actually quit due to the fact that Jack Nars actually quit this run because he was actually spending more money on flying to Canada than what they were paying him, and he begged Mark Goodson for a raise, and Goodson said, no can do. So that's what happened. So anyway, getting back to our story here. But the point is, folks, is that let me tell you, it's kind of a sad story. I hate it when people tell me you're too old to go to these concerts, and I want to tell them, fuck you. I'd rather be around some young chick with a nice ass than to be around somebody my age who maxed out her body 20 years ago by having too many kids. I'm sorry, I hate, I know it's not cool to body shame people. I've been body shamed myself, specifically by my father and school bullies. But I told myself years ago I would never marry a woman with kids or marry a woman who looked like she was bigger than I was. I like being around young women. It's just me. Especially the cute college girls who go to these festivals. And I just, and same thing with my cousin. He actually came, so he wasn't supposed to come, okay? He came at the last minute because he had an argument with his longtime girlfriend, and she begged him not to go, but he did. Yeah. And I'm like, something, man? That's one of the worst things about having a girlfriend, somebody who can be so controlling in your life, is, I've always been a very independent person. I've always been somebody who doesn't like to be told that I'm too old for this or I'm too young for this and I need to think about doing something else. And and my father is like that, and I'm dead serious. It's like earlier this week I was listening to Tom Morello talk about his mother. Tom Morello, of course, the guitarist from Rage Against the Machine and Audioslave. His mother, Mary Morello, was a First Amendment champion. She passed away a few weeks ago. She made it to, I think, 102. And what happened was Tom was talking about how she went to a Ice Cube concert back in the early 90s, and Tom went with her, and the security said, "You ain't going in here," because it looked like she looked like the type of person who would actually hate Ice Cube, but it was the opposite. And she screamed a storm of obscenities in front of this guy. And it's like, okay, ma'am, you're going in. Murray was a champion for freedom of speech. And, and I know it's kind of awkward to see older people go to EDM festivals. But you know what? Look, I'm going to tell you something. So let me tell you the story about what happened when I was at this festival. So on the main stage, they had this EDM duo called Two Friends. They were doing a lot of dubstep, and they did this remix of Justin Bieber's "Baby Baby." Yeah, that terrible his breakout song from 20 years ago. Jesus Christ, has he been around that long? So I had to get the hell out of there, because to me, Bieber is breaking. It's what's that saying? To me, people like Justin Bieber push the envelope a little too far for me. So I got the hell out of there. And on the other stage, the smaller Leave It All Behind stage, the lab, as they called it, the guy spinning on that stage, he was doing house music. And he did, he dropped Gypsy Woman by Crystal Waters. And that song came out when I was maybe 10. Yeah, that's kind of my era. I always loved the story about that song. So Crystal Waters, the woman who did that song originally, come. Yeah, it's been raining on and off. I'm trying to get some shelter here. So here's the story. Crystal Waters before she got famous, she worked at the police department in Washington D.C. She worked in the cyber task force, if you will. And then what happened was so this is what happened. There was another person who worked in the police department. He was a singer, and I guess he needed backup vocalists. And long story short, it led to a record contract. She recorded Gypsy Woman because on the way to work every day, there would be a woman sitting in a street corner who was homeless and was wearing raggedy clothes. So what happened was Crystal wrote a song about her. And, she put in the hook, and it turned into a huge club hit. And not only a huge club hit, but it went top 4. It was a big top 10 hit back in 91. I think it was like number 8 on the charts. So here's what happened. The song was so popular that In Living Color did a parody of it. And Crystal, who was a young mother at the time, what had happened was the kids came home from school and they were in tears because of In Living Color doing a parody of it. And Kim Wayans did the parody. So what happened was the kids were crying. She was upset too. And then what happened was the next day, the accountant called. And he said to her, that song, because it was used on In Living Color, just gave you a new comma in your bank account. So the kids at school were so the laughter ended for the kids at school. But, she had she pretty much lived off that song and a few others throughout her career. But, EDM is something for everybody. And I don't want to hear you're too old to do this, I'm too old to do that. It's like, fuck you, Because when I was a kid growing up in northern Michigan, I wanted to go to concerts. I wanted to do a lot, like my cousins did. They went to concerts all the time because they lived in Detroit. Up in northern Michigan, it was mostly washed up old country singers from the 70s or younger talent. And it's like, I don't like country music. I'm not a hillbilly. Please keep thinking that I will love this retarded hillbilly shit. Sorry for using that word, but I get pissed off thinking about country music. But the point is, I want to say this. The point is, folks, I want to have the fun that I didn't have growing up. And that's kind of the reason why I live here in Grand Rapids. And, I go to concerts. I try to make my life better by doing the things I couldn't do growing up. And I know it costs money sometimes. And, I got people standing in my way as an obstacle. And sometimes I have to talk to them. And, I got to remind them, I'm an adult. I can make my own fucking decisions. Don't tell me that I'm too old for this and I'm too old for that. I mean, here's my dad watching Fox fake news all the time, thinking that, and he's upset that gas is now $4.39 a gallon, and he says it should be much lower. Well, it's because the war in Iran is not doing well. We are fighting a fake war over nothing. It's a quagmire. Trump lied to you, man. This is what happens when you surround yourself by uneducated people. My father was a high school dropout, and he never wanted to better his life, unfortunately. And he had multiple excuses, like, well, I made more money than your mom did. Oh, your mom makes mistakes. Yeah, well, he makes mistakes too. I make mistakes as well. But the point is that sometimes you got to find out why your decisions are better than theirs. And that's what it boils down to. So, anyway. But anyway, I still had a fun time at Breakaway. My cousin came over on Friday. He had a couple of too many White Claws. White Claw was a big sponsor this year. I did not have any alcoholic beverages. I didn't do any pot. I did not. Some guy even gave me a mushroom. And I said, no, thank you. Yeah, I'm just, it's like on Friday I saw people passed out, puking their guts out. One person had to be hauled away to first aid on a tractor. It was like, oh. And, on Saturday, I had a bunch of, there were a bunch of sweaty guys bashing into me because they were too intoxicated. It's like, dude, stay the fuck away from me. Unless you're a smoking hot chick with a nice ass and nice tits, leave me a fuck alone. Yeah. It's like, I understand that EDM does attract gay people, and so does rock. I mean, come on, there's a ton of gays in rock. But the truth of the matter is that I'm not one of them. Yeah, there was even a guy at Breakaway this year, this really old-looking guy. He looked like he was 80 and wearing a thong and a leather cap. It's like, I can't unsee that. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of watching King of the Hill, and Dale Gribble would be wearing a thong, and it's like, oh, no, 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 no. Hot girl in the thong, good. Yeah, there was even a girl who I was close to at the event, and she was wearing a thong, and her side snatch was showing, and yeah, she had a bunch of razor bumps on there. Yeah, so okay, enough to talk about. Let's talk about more serious matters. Speaking of insurance, I talked a little bit about the insurance industry. Well, as we all know, Luigi Mangione has pled guilty. He pled guilty to the murder of Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO that he stalked and murdered, shot to death. And it looks like Luigi will be locked up in prison, probably for the rest of his life. He hasn't been sentenced yet. We'll talk more about that later. But I'm going to say this about Luigi. Luigi only killed one person with a gun. Brian killed more people with a pen stroke. Think about it. Why are we one of the most civilized nations on earth, one of the wealthiest nations on earth, and yet we can't give our own people universal health, the same universal health care that's been a success in dozens of nations around the globe. We have one of the worst healthcare systems on the planet. And the big excuse is that, well, if we shut down the insurance companies, it's going to hurt a lot of people. Well, yeah, the CEOs who are multimillionaires, like Brian Thompson, and he made all that money by saying no. I mean, he was a rubber stamp. That's who he was. No, no, nope. You had a heart attack? Nope. You got cancer? Nope. This is why, folks, in 2028, I hope to God that that AOC will run for president. I think she should. We need a progressive in the White House. And, the Democrats, they're trying real hard to stay too far in the middle. And I'm like, okay, so why did Abdul El-Sayed win the Democratic primary here in Michigan? Here's why, folks. Americans are tired. of so-called Democrats who are so milquetoast, who want to say, well, we need to protect the healthcare industry because they do so much good. No, they don't. Quit being, the type of people who say, I will fix shit, but when somebody forks over a ton of money to me, yeah, our minds will change. Yeah. Which is another reason why I almost want to say that politics needs to be like NASCAR. They need to stop wearing suits and switch over to these jackets that say what companies support them. That's what needs to happen. This is why nobody likes politics. It's because, you got to remember, folks, that when we shop, we make when we buy from a store, that business will give money to politics. Some may not give money as a company, but their senior management and their employees will. And every day even you do it. So for an example, let's say, and so I watch these videos from this guy, the Woke Ginger, all the time. And I love the Woke Ginger. He gives out a list of companies that support the Democrats and those who support the Republicans. And he even talks about, he goes to Costco a lot. And he even actually goes to Walmart because he realizes that in a lot of America, Walmart is the only grocery option there is. It's because Walmart chased away family-owned grocery stores. I mean, I grew up in northern Michigan. There was a small town in Antrim County called Ellsworth. And Ellsworth was one of the birthplaces of Spartan stores, which, they were a big grocery co-op here in Michigan for decades. They're now Spartan Nash, and Spartan Nash is now part of CNS Wholesale out of New Hampshire. And what happened was, there was this guy, Tony Shooks, who invited a bunch of grocers to his home one day in Ellsworth, and he said, I want to start a co-op with you guys. And the co-op was originally called Associated Grocers, excuse me. And eventually they were bought out by the Grand Rapids Wholesale Grocery Company. And in 1952 they were bought by they became Spartan stores. And Ellsworth, once upon a time, had 2 Spartan stores in town. They had Shooks, and there was another store called Vander Arks, which was right around the corner from Shooks. Shooks was at a street corner in downtown Ellsworth. But this is what happened. Vander Arks was then sold to another guy named Smalley. Smalley flipped the store to IGA, and then he gave up. He decided to sell the Shooks. He sold his store to Shooks Market. Shooks actually moved into his that store because it was a little bigger, I think. The original Shooks was demolished, and Shooks was the only major grocery store in town for decades. And long story short, another guy built another grocery store in town, Viking Foods. It didn't do very well because he was trying to compete with stores in East Jordan and Charlevoix, and he just couldn't make a deal of it. So, as a matter of fact, Shooks and Viking Foods in Ellsworth were both shut down by the late 90s, and somebody bought the old Viking Foods building. It switched hands multiple times over the years. Long story short, Ellsworth just couldn't support a grocery store anymore. And part of the problem was that, because of bigger and nicer stores in East Jordan, East Jordan and Charlevoix both had, Lens Markets, which is now Family Fare, which is now owned by Spartan Nash. And so guess what Ellsworth has now? Dollar General, right on the edge of town. Yeah, the both buildings that once housed Schnucks are gone, and the old Viking Foods building is now a storage facility. So anyway, so getting back to the rest of the story, the point is that we need to start realizing that if you hate Trump very much, it is hypocritical when you turn around and go buy stuff, go to Arby's or Jimmy John's or you buy Angel Soft toilet paper because, Koch Industries, they're big Trump supporters. People need to think. Do their goddamn research. Stop supporting Republican bullshit. Because when you buy Angel Soft, when you buy, that Jamocha shake from Arby's, all that money is going to support Trump and Trump's sycophants. They don't need money. You do. We're supposed to have the Epstein files released by now. Where are they? So, getting back to our Bee-otch of the day, I'm a little off track here. So, Donald Trump, unfortunately, acted like a total asshole this past week. He decided this past week, while he was in Turkey, he needed to go into switch planes and go from, Arab Bribe 1, Qatari Bribe 1, whatever you want to call it, and go into another plane because he thought that he was going to get killed by come. Yeah, my dog, rain's starting to pick up again, and my dog is like, yeah, let's sit and relax. Yeah, she's due for a bath anyway. So let me explain this to you. So he switched a plane while he was in Turkey, by going into a air beverage truck, and it's like he's a coward. He's a coward because he got himself into this mess with Iran. And on top of that, he made the douchebaggy decision to tell the nation's parents through RFK Jr. that, instead of giving your kids all these vaccines, go from 18 to 12. And the reason being is because Trump said that, kids were getting, too much vaccines, and it causes autism. Folks, my mother was an anti-vaxxer, okay? My mother did not give me my vaccines when I was a kid. And the reason being was because her mother told her not to. Her mom was into homeopathic medicine. She felt that, she was into New Age medicine and shit like that. I remembered as a kid drinking barley greens, and it was gross. Ugh. I could not eat that shit. She used to send us shit all the time from Arizona that was supposed to be good for you. She even had us brush our teeth with this weird toothbrush that was supposed to send signals to your teeth. It's like, what the fuck are you giving us? Yeah, and she gave us this weird toothpaste called Piolu. It's like, it tasted weird. So this is what happened. I didn't take any vaccines as a young boy, but guess what happened anyway? I got autism. That's right. Your humble King Chuck is autistic. And it was not because of vaccine. So there's a lot of theories. Nobody knows exactly what causes autism. The Trump regime says it's vaccines. There's no proof that vaccine and autism have any connection. And then on top of that, there's also Tylenol. And guess what? Once again, no connection between Tylenol and the tism. But here's what happened. When Biden was president, his people did a research. And guess what? They found out that there was a link between autism and homemade infant formula. And guess what my mother gave me as a young boy? That's right, homemade infant formula. She didn't want to go and buy me Similac. Oh no, can't do that. Plus, breast milk was out of the question because she was a smoker. She didn't want me to suck on her teats at all. And I'll be honest with you folks, it breaks my heart that we have a regime that likes to go around and tell us that everything that's good for you is bad and everything bad for you is good, because that's who Donald Trump is. He is a bad person who supports the worst human beings on earth. And we are paying the price because he went after the uneducated to get him into the White House, and he, who don't understand history at all. And that was his big selling point. No taxes on tips or overtime. So basically, that's what Trump wants. He wants us all to work more than he's now, I'll tell you, man, that's what FDR did as president. He passed a law. Anytime you work over 40 hours, you end up you get overtime. That's how the law works. However, when Donald is telling Americans, you don't need to work 40 hours a week anymore. You need to work 60. And even for some people, 60 hours a week is bullshit. You don't have time to have fun. And on top of that, you don't even have the money to have fun. Because that's how the Trump regime works. Donald Trump does not care about me or you or anyone else. And now he's telling the nation's parents that those vaccines will kill your kids. No, vaccines save lives. And, it's like, why are we afraid to eat lettuce now? Why are we afraid to, some of us were afraid to eat meat for a bit because of the screw worm situation. That's what it boils down to. I think it's, this is why we need a progressive in the White House next in 2028. I mean, folks, the blue wave is happening. And sadly here in Michigan, Mike Rogers and his sycophants are spending big time dollars. And John James too, they're spending big time dollars to win here in Michigan. They're even putting up an ad that tries to link Jocelyn Benson to the Ku Klux Klan because she was, part of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and the right wing accused them of actually doing business with all the people that wanted to that they all labeled a hate group, which is true. You know, of course, one of the ads, they claim that the ACLU, not ACLU, but the Southern Poverty Law Center, they want to basically they are now calling religious groups hate groups, which is true. Because a lot of these groups, like the American Family Association and the American, the focus on the family, they went after gay people. And as I've said multiple times, older copies of the Bible mention nothing about homosexuality. It was the Red Scare that persuaded religious fanatics to put the word homosexual in the Bible. And they made up the outrageous claim that the Greeks actually had a word for it. No, they don't. So there you go. I mean, they'll stop at nothing to get Mike Rogers elected. Ditto with John James. And, they want Michigan to go red. Because, hey, it went red for Trump in 2024. And, I've said it once, I'll say it again. The Democrats got to stop being centralists. They got to listen to people. Ditto with radio companies in northern Michigan. I actually wanted to talk about this first, but I went off track. So, northern Michigan radio ratings came out last week. WKLT was number 1 with 11 share. 8 share went to number 2, Big Country 102.9. The station that is traditionally at number 1, which is WTCM FM 103.5, well, they're at number 3 now. They were actually at number 5 last book, but they went back up a little bit. Number 4, in the 4th spot, we had 106 KHQ. Number 5 went to Light 96. Light 96, of course, they are now on 96.7 in Calac again, due to the transmitter collapse that they had last year due to the ice storm. Number 6, WTCM AM 580. News Talk 580 went back, was at number 6. They're actually doing pretty good for a conservative talk station that has no FM repeater. Of course, as I mentioned multiple times, a lot of older people live up north, and they're all Republicans, sadly. Of course, WTCM also had big lineup changes too. Ron Jolly retired, and Vic McCarty, who handled middays, passed away. So Jack O'Malley is back to being the morning guy. Of course, he was morning guy at WTCM FM for 25 years. And then they moved Dave Ramsey to middle of the night from late nights to midday, which is a better time slot for him, obviously, even though he's now on a day late schedule. But then again, Ramsey designed his show to be on the air anytime people want him to be. So, anyway, so Dave Ramsey is now on from 10 to noon. The rest of the schedule virtually remains unchanged, although they still carry an hour of Ramsey at 12 midnight. But they expanded the night show that Cumulus has from 9 to midnight. So there you go. Yeah, you're not going to go. These people, yeah, my dog wants to go on a ride with strangers, and it ain't going to happen today. Number 7, WCCW FM 107.5. They went through a slight format change as Good Vibes 107.5, and they now play a lot of music from the 90s and 2Ks, mixed in with 70s and 80s stuff, and I'm like, yeah, it's not a bad idea, but the imaging is bad. Yeah, so the story with the imaging is that They have a lot of jingles, but they're all AI generated. You can just tell they are AI generated. And then for the live read, for the live reads, they had it sounded like it was all done by a female intern. And I'm like, this is not how you run a radio station. And yeah, the ratings did go down a little bit as a result. Number 8 was Rock 105 and 95.5. Still steady at 3.6, 3.2 to the Bear at number 9. And I think they tied with WIAA, the classical station, at 88.7. And so anyway, but here's the so anyway, the lowest rated of the 100,000 watters, the big power stations in northern Michigan, number 14, that went to Star 106.7, Star Country. I don't know what Trish is going to do to that station. Come on, that station's been in a one-share territory for too long. Lowest rate station. It did go up a little bit from a 1.3 to a 1.8. And then, Bob FM fell big time. They're at 2.7 now. They were at a 4-share a while back. Z93 is still holding on with a 2.7. Yeah. So, all I have to say about that is, I know it's Nielsen, and Nielsen only takes a small sample of people. And, that's the way they've always kind of run things. So the rest of the story is that Z93, well, actually not, let's not talk about Z93. They're going through changes. If there's one, so this is what happened early this year, and this was foolish. Rock 105 and 95.5 got rid of 2 of their DJs. Guy Dark went over to the Bear. He was doing nights. And the afternoon jock, who was and their afternoon guy, Dave Doran, I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he was fired or he quit on his own accord. So now, Rock 105 and 95.5 has Cartman from 7 a.m. to 1 in the afternoon. And then Ann Carlini from 1 to 7. And, it's sad that once upon a time, this was a station that had a 6 or 7 share in the rates. I did some research. And, the number one active rock station in Michigan, share-wise, is, WGRD. They got Freeburg and Hot Wings. And then you got number 2, which is WRAF. 3 is Q106 in Lansing. And Banana 101.5 rounds out the top 4. Of course, I couldn't do Z93. Z93 is, they've been embargoed due to the fight that Cumulus is having with Nielsen these days. So, let me explain this to you. Rock 105 and 95.5 is last place among these stations. And I would imagine that if you're over the age of 60, you're saying, well, it's because active rock doesn't work in northern Michigan. Dude, Rock 105 and 95.5 once upon a time had a 6 or 7 share. And it was because they had a great afternoon guy in Smitty. But, guess what? Black Diamond didn't want to pay him a livable wage. He was only getting paid $40,000 a year, which is kind of low these days for radio. So what did they do? They let him go. Well, he quit on his own accord to become a bartender. And that's what he does now. He's a bartender at Turtle Creek Casino. And like I said, I don't know what happened to Dave Doran. And I've even tried to look for him on social media. He's not. I don't think he's on there. So the rest of the story. So this is what's hurting Rock 105 and 95.5. They're stuck. You know, the only thing helping the station is Cartman. And, you know, a lot of people love Cartman. You know, some people say that he's a great alternative to Omelette and Finster on KLT. But the problem with Cartman is he's a lousy programming director, and it shows. I monitor their playlist, and they have the tendency of only adding new music to the lineup when they feel like it. And like for an example, I noticed that they didn't add the new Evanescence song, Who Do You Follow, until after the song had peaked at number 1 on the rock charts. And to me, it says that they're so fucking lazy when it comes to the addition of new music to their lineup. And I think it's due to the fact that Cartman, he was lazy. He was always a lazy programmer. You know? I mean, the first time around, when he was PD, he pulled the same shit. And, you know, then when he moved to Wisconsin and started taping his show from there, because he accepted a job at WIXX over in Green Bay, Smitty was given PD honors. And he did, you know, he actually programmed this, you know, he was good at adding new music at the right time. But unfortunately, it didn't pay him well. So he quit, and Cartman went back to being PD. And let's not forget that they even added what was that guy's name? Greg something. Yeah, he was the radio guy who did a night show. Greg something. Who gives a fuck? Yeah. Anyway, yeah, they aired his show for like 3 days, and they pulled him off the air because he wasn't a good fit for the format. Yeah, it was all canned shit. It wasn't even a live radio program. It was just shit handed to them by the syndicator. So now Rock 105 and 95.5 is, you know, it's like, what the fuck are they doing now? And, you know, it's amazing how, when I'll tell you this, folks, I would go, a while back I was on, I think it was Facebook, and there was a guy who commented that he lived in Detroit, and in the 90s, he would have to bring his entire CD collection with him because radio in Northern Michigan was so bad back in the 90s, and he was a hard rock and heavy metal guy. And all they had was KLT, and KLT was stuck in 1979 musically. And I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. KLT wants to be stuck in the past. And, you know, of course, obviously, they've always had great ratings and nothing to bitch about, obviously. But the listeners, some of the listeners have said otherwise. But here's the thing, folks. Rock 105 and 95.5 was supposed to be the answer to some of the problems, and now KLT is kicking their ass, into the next county. Ditto with the Bear. I'm not sure how well Q100's doing because they don't subscribe to Nielsen. But here's the thing. The reason why I'm still doing this after 27 years is because I want Rock 105 and 95.5 to compete with KLT again. But Black Diamond, they don't want to put up the money. They don't want to put up the money. They don't want to put up they don't want to put the money, and it's like, well, you probably don't want the ratings, don't you? I mean, they've been KLT's bitch for too long. Ever since, Amit and Finster came back to KLT. They don't know how to compete, folks. And, and I hate it when people even come to me and write to me and say, Chuck, you shouldn't be writing about us. If you don't like us so much, then how come... Yeah, and it's happened to me a couple of times. I've had a couple of folks give me cease and desist notices. Of course, notoriously Roy Henderson, and, well, look at him now. Living in a crappy apartment here in Grand Rapids. Let me tell you the story, folks. I want to tell you this. Remember what happened a few summers ago at Shorts Brewing Company over in Bel Air? Well, it made national headlines. Guy goes into Shorts, waits an hour in line to get in. He sits at a table. He orders a pizza. The people next to him end up with his pizza, and he ends up with their pizza. He gets upset. The other people start eating his pizza. And he said, you owe me a free pizza. And they're like, no, we don't. That's not how we do shit here at Shorts. So the two went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The waiter and the management went back and forth and back and forth. So this is what happens. He stands up. He walks out of the restaurant. And while doing so, he takes the other pizza that was sitting on one of those pizza platform type deals. And the pizza flips over a couple of times and lands on the floor. And people look at him as, what the fuck is this guy doing? Talk about disgruntled. So this is what ends up happening. Joe puts up a video of the guy online, and he exposes him as somebody who doesn't give a shit about Joe's employees. And he dishonored them. But here's what happened. People, had a mixed reaction about the video, and they said the same thing. He did nothing wrong. The man did nothing wrong because what Joe needs to realize is this man who walked out mad, this is what happened to him. He was Joe's boss. The customer is your boss. And when you go on like Henderson did and tell the world that I'm the bad guy here because, I'm trying to expose how he does business. Well, guess what? You're not the one who subscribes to Nielsen, asshole. You go around town allegedly and tell people you're kicking TCM's ass with WLDR. Okay, so how come you lost all your employees? How come you lost your sales staff? How come you sent one of your guys to jail even, and he successfully sued you for $25,000 because you stole his kid's money, child support payment? That's the scumbag who Roy is. So this is what ends up happening to Joe Short. He takes down the video, even though other people have posted the video. And this is what happens. Joe made the realization that the customer deserves better. So what happened was Joe apologized to the guy. He invited him back, and he had a discussion with him. How can we make things better? That's what adults do. Make things better for me and you. Because when you don't have customers, you don't have a business, you don't have money, you don't have a life. And that's how shit is supposed to work. And I want Rock 105 and 95.5 to kick KLT's ass. KLT sucks. Yes, they have a metal show on Friday nights now. Whoop-de-doo. And Rock 105 and 95.5, they don't. Instead, they would rather air emo music on Saturday nights. that's not fit on an active rock format. But that's how they like to do things over there. You see, folks, I want Rock 105 and 95.5 to kick KLT's ass. Because KLT is a station stuck in 1979. And, the Bear, that's another problem. The Bear has that problem, and of course, as I think I mentioned this, their new midday guy, Dave Barr is his name. He is a MAGA Republican. He ran for local office in Traverse City and lost. So after he lost, he decided to get back into radio again and became the new midday guy at the Bear. And now their ratings are much worse. And it's like, there needs to be a reset somewhere. And having less, an active rock station should not be reduced to just two people. A morning guy and a woman who is so old she probably sleeps with one of those things that women sleep with, that soak up all the urine. Whatever those things are called. Yeah, the Pure Wick system. Yeah, anyway. Let's see what time we got here. I'm over an hour now. So let's try to wrap it up. So that's what I'm trying to say here. I mean, I understand that the same shit is going on with a lot of other rock stations. X107.5 in Las Vegas, that station used to be the Stern affiliate in that city. They're now owned by Beasley's. Beasley's also the owner of WRIF in Detroit. They're selling to K-Love. And K-Love, they're buying up stations left and right. It's sad that terrestrial radio just doesn't know how to compete with Sirius XM or Spotify or whatever. I mean, it's sad, it's like they don't know how to pull the old everything I can do better type of deal. Because I look at Sirius XM, they're always breaking new rock. They got young DJs. They got, the only old fart they got is Jose Mangan. I think he's in his 50s. And Jose, the guy sounds like a teenager. He's awesome. He's professional. He's very supportive of the metal and hard rock community. Always has been. Anyway. So, just a thought. I just hope that whatever change, if they decide to make any changes at all, they're all positive. But it's terrestrial radio. They don't know where the hole in their ass is anymore. But I'll tell you who knows what. But here's the story, folks. We do have some good news. Let's end with Hero of the Day. We haven't done, the world needs some more heroes. And the hero of the day, my hero of the day is the Spencer's Spirit Corporation. If you haven't heard already, Spencer Spirit Corporation has just bought Hot Topic. Okay, so Hot Topic, they've been a shopping mall staple now for over 30 years. They were bought out. So the story was they were bought out by a company called Sycamore Partners in 2013. Sycamore, unfortunately, supports Republican politics. They're part of the Trump regime, unfortunately. They own Hot Topic and their subsidiary called Box Lunch. Torrid used to be a part of the company, but they spun that off many years ago. Torrid is the plus-size women's retailer. So here's what happened. So the story is, because of this, every time you bought that metal shirt from Hot Topic, it went into the pockets of Trump, unfortunately. So now Sycamore has made the decision to reverse course and sell Hot Topic to the Spencer Spirit Corporation. Spencer Spirit is the company that owns Spencer's gift shop, and you go to Spencer's and they sell everything from more rock shirts and shirts that have to do with like Rick and Morty, and a lot of pop culture stuff there. Of course, in the back part of the store, you'll see a lot of adult stuff as well, dildos and pocket pussies and whatnot. So here's the story. Of course, Spirit is that Halloween retailer that has the tendency of leasing out all these little retail shops that have closed down. I guess they now do a Spirit Christmas now. Yeah. So anyway, Spirit is such a huge so anyway, now Spencer Spirit has bought Hot Topic. So they're now under the one roof. And I'm happy to say that some of the people who run Spencer Spirit are all Democrats. They support the Democratic platform. Good for them. I always make it folks, I grew up with Hot Topic. I bought a lot of my clothes from there growing up. I loved their, the anti-pop culture stuff that they sold, like Spear Brit. They had a t-shirt there called Spear Britney. There was another shirt there that they, that said "In Suck," making fun of NSYNC. There was some teenage girls that got mad at me for that. It's like, oh, man. Anyway, long story short, Spencer Spirit. So anyway, Hot Topic, I think, has really gone downhill over the years. I mean, it has gotten a little bit bland, but still a great place to buy a rock band t-shirt. But the good news is, I did not know that they were, mostly MAGA. But not anymore. I will definitely make it a point to buy more from Hot Topic, and of course Spencer's as well. I love Spencer's too. So, heroes of the day, Spencer Spirit Corporation. So, yeah, there are some good people you need to buy more from. So, anyway, I've outlasted my welcome, folks. I've been blabbing for a little too long. I best get going home. I'm King Chuck. Good day and good luck to you all.